Fall times greetings, Reid.
Fall times greetings. It's that most magical time of the year again, Avery.
What time?
Where the air's getting crisp, the leaves are turning, everyone's got gourds just about.
Just around.
There's corn about.
Right.
It's my favorite time of the year. Is it your favorite time of the year?
No, but it's a good one.
It's a good one. It's my favorite time of the year. And of course we're talking about October, spooky season, Halloween, whatever you want to call it. It's time to get your fall dress on and watch horror movies. And what better way to kick off our spooky October, our first spooky October here in the Green Corner, than by watching a little old gem called Over the Garden Wall. This is something that's very special to both of us.
It is. This is a show that we watched for the first time together, I believe. Well, first time together for me.
Yeah, I found it. So Over the Garden Wall came out in 2014. I found it a couple years after that. And then when we were living together at university, I introduced this to you. We watched it. We've loved it ever since.
I enjoyed it a little bit, I would say. It was good. I was a big fan.
I've watched it pretty much every Halloween. It's kind of become a gold standard, even in our friend group. It's something that we constantly are quoting.
Yeah. I don't really do the whole seasonal thing with, like, I have a couple of Christmas movies I like. I don't really have a whole lot of pieces of media that I associate with a season other than Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah.
Which is just the epitome of fall, and fall doesn't start until I watch it once that year.
Yeah, it does. What is Over the Garden Wall? I guess for anyone who tuned into this and doesn't know what it is, Over the Garden Wall came out in 2014.
Yep. It
was actually based on an animated short that came out the year prior called The Tome of the Unknown in 2013. And that was met with such critical success and awards that it kind of jump-started the campaign to make a full-fledged show. So Over the Garden Wall came out the year after, 2014, created by Pat McHale, who's best known before this for his work with Adventure Time. He was one of the main players in Adventure Time. Over the Garden Wall came out 10-episode miniseries, a one and done. There were talks about making it a full normal TV show. There was even an 18-episode version of this at one point. And that got canned for a 10-episode miniseries, which is the product that we have today. And the story of Over the Garden Wall is kind of a classical fairy tale. I'll do a spoiler-free synopsis for anyone who doesn't know. Over the Garden Wall is the story of two brothers, Wirt and Greg, who get lost in the vast, dark woodlands known as the Unknown. And in their quest to get home, they end up in all kinds of misadventures and meet a whole wacky cast of characters, namely Beatrice the Bluebird, Jason Funderburker the Frog, the Woodsman, and they're also pursued by an evil entity known only as the Beast. And the story is pretty much the two boys trying to get back home through this fall wonderland or nightmare, depending on what part of the show that we're in.
A little of both. And if you haven't seen it, and it is the fall time where you are, more than I've ever meant it on another video, pause right now, go watch it. It's like 90 minutes long.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
It's 10 episodes, but they're like 10 minutes each. So this thing is super short. I've only ever watched it all at once.
Yeah.
But we were originally going to do a deep dive on Over the Garden Wall. That was the original plan, and that would have been fine. But it would just be you and I gushing about it.
It would be. And we'd have fun doing that. We've in fact done it a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I don't know how good it would be to film.
Yeah, and it's like, we'd be quoting it a lot, talking about how amazing it is. So we thought, you know what, maybe rather than do our deep dive, our normal format, what if we do something a little different and challenge ourselves?
We're gonna shake it up.
We're gonna shake it up, and we're going to rank every episode of Over the Garden Wall, which is no easy task.
No.
Because this is darn near perfect. We're not doing deep dive, but if we were gonna be scoring this, this would be one of the few things I've ever seen in my entire life that's both personally and critically A+.
Absolutely. It is a flawless product.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
So how do you rank something that's perfect? How do you choose a best episode and a worst episode? That's what we're going to try to do today.
I'm going to be honest, Reid, it sucked.
It was challenging.
Really hard.
Really hard. So won't you grab a mug of cider and a slice of pumpkin pie and come get lost with us in the unknown as we attempt to rank and discuss every episode of Over the Garden Wall. Won't you take a peek?
And how the gentle wind beckons through the leaves.
All right, we got to get into this. So I guess a little bit of housekeeping. We both did independent rankings.
We did not talk about them beforehand. We did not watch together.
No, and I'm very excited to see what yours are, because there's really no wrong answer here.
No.
Everyone gets something a little bit different out of this show. Every episode, there's no bad episode.
No. We'll get it out of the way early that the last place episode is still a 10, and I still absolutely love it.
Yeah.
It's like ranking Miyazaki movies. You can't pick a bad ranking, and I'm not going to be surprised at anyone's ranking.
Yeah.
So these are our opinions. They were you're picking toenails. That's not the expression. You're splitting hairs.
Picking toenails. You're picking toenails.
You're splitting hairs in order to separate any of these episodes, but I'm pretty happy with the order I've got them in, 1 to 10.
Me too. I shuffled around a lot.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go through them, number 10 to number 1. Yep. We have presumably we're gonna have different rankings. So what we're gonna do is we're each gonna say what we had for each number, but then we'll talk about them in the order of Avery's, just for simplicity. So we'll talk about the episodes in that order. Obviously, spoiler warning. For the whole series, we're going to talk about each episode. So if you haven't seen it, spoiler warning for the entire show. And also, it's a ranking, so it's going to be out of order. Presumably, unless by some magical coincidence you happen to rank them in order.
That would be crazy.
That would be crazy.
Greg, I think we're lost. We should have left a trail or something.
I can leave a trail of candy from my pants.
I think it's time to kick yourselves off with number 10.
All right.
Tell me, what is your number 10?
This was actually pretty easy for me. I still think it's excellent. Great episode, of course, but for me, a clear-cut last place was episode 5, Mad Love.
Okay. Mine's right around here for Mad Love as well. My number 10 is not Mad Love, but it's also at the bottom, so I'm not shocked by that. Yep. My number 10 is Babes in the Wood.
I knew you were going to have that one low.
Really?
I knew you were going to have it low, and I don't agree.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Babes in the Wood when we get to it, but Mad Love, that's your number 10.
Yeah.
So, episode Mad Love, basically our characters are taking a rest from the woodlands of the unknown, and they're at the vast mansion of Quincy Endicott, voiced by the great John Hughes.
John Cleese.
John Cleese. Not voiced by John Hughes. Voiced by John Cleese. They're kind of resting, having a meal with Quincy Endicott. There's basically 2 major subplots here. Fred the horse, who, this is kind of his major episode, and Beatrice the bluebird are trying to steal 2 cents from Quincy Endicott.
If we're going to Adelaide's, we need 2 cents.
So they need to find 2 cents in this vast estate of wealth, which Quincy makes sure we all are aware of.
Come, everyone, let us retire to the parlor and enjoy my unnecessary excess of wealth and luxury.
The other subplot, of course, is that Quincy Endicott believes that there is a ghost loose in his mansion, a beautiful ghost whom he loves, and Greg is trying to help him reunite with the ghost.
Is that the portrait?
No, look, why don't I just tell you when we reach the portrait?
At the end of the episode, it's revealed that there was no ghost. It was actually that his mansion had gotten so large, he'd accidentally merged his mansion with his rival competitor, who runs another tea company, Marguerite Gray. Yep. And then they fall in love at the end and send the boys on their way. That's more or less what happens in this episode.
I will start off by saying it might have my favorite line in the whole series, which is Fred the horse.
No, we didn't. Fred's a talking horse. He can do whatever he wants.
I want to steal.
It's so funny. Fred the horse is weird. He's like really only in 1.5 episodes.
What? You guys are bonkers.
Mad Love is my number 10 for a few reasons. One, I would put it on a short list of episodes that don't have a great song.
Right.
There's some music in it. There isn't like a real banger. The episode also just feels very disconnected. A lot of them do a great job of being a little side plot, but you still kind of get what they're doing.
Right.
Mad Love doesn't. They're just in the mansion at the start, and it is to get 2 cents for the ferry. It was kind of my third watch that I even remembered that was why they were there. It's like kind of in the end. It just feels like a total dalliance from the main plot, which is fine, but I got to deduct points for something.
Yeah.
It has some funny lines, and there is a mystery. What I'm compelled by in Over the Garden Wall are fall-time vibes, cartoony, fun stuff, and horror, which it balances very well in a lot of the good episodes, and I would say this episode does none of those 3 things.
Yeah, that's part of the problem is the mansion is very well illustrated, it's beautiful, but it removes you from the fall vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, this estate does fit into the aesthetic of The Unknown in a way. It's not like a stretch, but it definitely doesn't have that rustic fall time feel. There's no pumpkins, there's no barns. It's an estate. And this is going to be something, a lot of my episodes that ended up lower were the ones that did something different.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that the show tried to do stuff different, but it's just not the ones that personally to my taste.
Yeah.
And this is definitely probably the strongest example of that. I'll just say Mad Love is my number 9. Okay. So like it's right around here. And I also wrote that the mansion is not that interesting of a location.
Nope.
And I think the biggest flaw for me with this episode is that the emotional payoff of him and Marguerite Gray meeting and falling in love at the end, there's no real emotion for me.
I don't care. Yeah.
Most of the other episodes, the ending's emotional payoff actually really hits. Yeah. Sometimes even makes me tear up. And this one, it's like, it's fine, but I don't care.
Good for them. This just crazy old man who's like also kind of a jerk has found love, and now we're just gonna never speak of him again. Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
What? Who do you think you are? Making accusations? I see it now. You're after my money.
This is, from a plot perspective, this is the episode where we learn that Beatrice the Bluebird was at once a human and had been cursed.
You used to be human? Did I know that? I don't think I knew that.
Jiminy Cricket, let's just find some coins, all right?
And that Wirt is kind of the reason he ran away from home in the first place is because of his shame around a crush.
Right.
And those are both really important character moments for them. And there's a point in this episode where they are in a closet together, kind of sharing these secrets while they're locked in a closet. And that sequence was really well done. I really like the stuff between Beatrice and Wirt because it's very strained. And Beatrice is such a weird character because she's kind of supposed to be our like guardian, our fairy godmother, but she's a jerk.
We need money.
You're scamming him?
I was thinking more like flat out stealing from him.
Yeah.
And she's emotionally manipulating the boys the entire show.
Yeah.
So it creates a very interesting dichotomy between her and Wirt. Wirt, who's kind of passive and doesn't really go in for her tricks, and her, who's trying to very strongly manipulate him to do stuff. This episode does a great job with both of them.
Wirt, that stuff's not weird. Those are just, well, the poetry thing is weird.
Mad Love, kind of bottom of both of our lists. John Cleese does a good job.
In one of his 2 roles, the better one of his 2 roles,
Yeah.
I'd say.
I'd say that, although overall I would put it as one of the lower guest voice appearances.
Yep.
Because I think he does a good job, but it is pretty much just how John Cleese talks from what I mean, I've only ever seen Monty Python, but a lot of his characters sound exactly like this.
Yeah.
No ghost?
No ghost? Then I am mad.
A lot of the other guest voice actors who we'll get to do real voice acting, where it's like you wouldn't know right away it's them. They're actually putting on a performance, and I appreciate that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, what's this suspicious mess over here?
So, number 9. Number 9. Tell me, Avery, what is number 9?
Number 9, this may be controversial. I tried to review each episode kind of totally on its own merits, which at points I'm excluding its significance to the overall story, and I think that's exemplified by number 9 being episode 9, Into the Unknown.
I think this is fair because I guess we need to tear the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
The overarching plot is the 2 boys trying to get home. There is a twist in episode 9 that Wirt and Greg are actually from our modern day world, and on Halloween night basically bonked their heads and are in the state of drowning, traveled to the unknown, and it's left intentionally ambiguous as to whether they actually went to the unknown or it was in their imagination.
Right.
Episode 9 is the reveal for that.
Into the unknown.
I expected that to be low.
Yeah.
That episode was in my mind before I did the rankings bottom, and on this rewatch went much higher.
Interesting.
So we'll talk about that. So your episode 9 is Into the Unknown. I'll just say mine is Mad Love. I already said that. So Mad Love. So yeah, Into the Unknown. I guess let's briefly synopsize it.
Yep.
So cold open. It's Wirt in modern day in suburban America on Halloween night. He's made a tape for a girl he has a crush on named Sarah. He goes to give it to her, but chickens out. But Greg, of course, takes the tape and gives it to Sarah.
Yeah, okay. I'll give it to her for you.
Oh, Greg, wait, no!
So Wirt is trying to get the tape back, which kind of sends him around town. He ends up going to a party that he's supposedly not invited to, but Greg, again, being the beam of sunshine he is, forces him to go inside the house.
Let's get her!
Yeah, let's get her.
No, we're not gonna get her like that.
You find out what their costumes actually are.
Yeah, the origin of the costumes.
that Greg's an elephant.
Yeah.
It's an elephant costume. Woo, woo. See my trunk?
The whole show we've been hearing that Wirt is scared of this guy, Jason Funderburker.
Right.
Who you think is going to be this machismo, big buff jock guy. We meet Jason Funderburker in this episode, who's his like romantic rival for Sarah, and it is the geekiest little guy.
Dweeb with the worst voice, who's just doing weird things the whole episode.
Bye, Wirt. Sayonara, Jason Funderburker.
He ends up meeting Sarah. She still has the tape. He ends up following her all the way to the graveyard. And when the police show up to break up the kids hanging out in the graveyard, Wirt and Greg run away, accidentally go over the graveyard wall, bonk their heads, roll down a hill, and in a state of drowning, enter into the unknown. So that's this episode. It's kind of hard to synopsize because it's the only one that really breaks the formula like this.
Yeah.
Thank you, old lady Daniels.
Goodbye, Gregory. And please don't call me old lady.
Yes, sir, young man.
So I love the twist, but I give more credit to the overarching story, and it's hard for me to give a lot of credit to this episode for being where the hammer drops. The actual episode just isn't as much fun for me. I don't think the teen drama stuff is as interesting as discovering a magical fairyland, which is a high bar. There are some good lines. It's great dialogue. There's fun characters. They do creative things when all the teens are talking and they're at the party. There's an amazing line when they're walking into the graveyard and they're like talking about the nature of consciousness.
Yeah.
Well, you're limiting the universe by limiting the possibility of human understanding.
Oh, yeah.
There's, of course, great moments, but going into this episode knowing what was coming, knowing the plot already, knowing where it was going, just sitting down for 20 minutes in front of this did very little for me.
And that is actually why I originally thought it was going to be a bit lower. On a rewatch, though, I appreciated it a lot more. One of the biggest themes that this show executes on is, and it's a great message for kids. This show has a lot of good messages for kids, but one of them is about social anxiety and shame. And Wirt is the epitome of someone who second guesses themselves. He always thinks everyone's kind of out to get them and that everyone cares, and no one cares. This is like a lesson. This is a lesson that would have rung really true for me as a kid, is like, you think no one likes you and you're not invited to something and everyone's gonna care. No one cares about you ever. Everything's fine. You're overthinking it. And this episode establishes, I think better than any other episode, that theme for Wirt. It's epitomized by when they go to the party. He's standing outside and he says, I can't go in there, Greg. I wasn't invited to this party. And it's like a pit in my stomach was like, oh, that sucks. That's so sad.
Why are you talking to them?
But then when he goes in the party, everyone's just like, hey, Wirt.
Yeah.
They just like welcome in. It's like maybe they just forgot to invite him. Like, it's totally fine.
It rings really true as well.
It rings really true. In that moment, if I had that, if I'd seen that as a kid, I honestly think it would have changed my perspective of a lot of my anxieties about things.
Oh, hey, guys. I don't know what he said, but it wasn't true.
Oh, hey, Wirt, how's it going?
As much as I'll agree that like on a rewatch, I'm not as excited to watch this one, emotionally, it hit a lot of really hard notes for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, see you around, guys.
I completely agree that this is emotionally one of the most effective ones, and it does a lot of character things. I guess what it came down to for me is that I had to decide what I'm ranking these episodes on.
Yeah, we never really established what our criteria is.
And I think by design, right? Like, this is not a ranking of the funniest Over the Garden Wall episodes or the most fall time, but some arbitrary, nebulous combination. And for me, I did end up having to skew it towards my favorite things about Over the Garden Wall. And while the emotional stuff is excellent, it's not my favorite thing, and watching these very kind of grounded character beats is not my favorite part of the show. Right? And although it is the top of the heap, probably, well, not the top, but it is a great example of that. It's not fall, it's not funny, it's not adventurous, it's not magical. Well, so that takes it away.
It is fall.
It is fall, I'm sorry, it is fall.
And I wanted to actually touch on that, is that you know how much I love Halloween-y stuff. Yeah. And you basically have to do two things if you're gonna be a Halloween-y thing. You need to be, and I came up with some terms for this to try to clarify it.
Good.
There's historical Halloween, which I also thought could be called Halloween Gothic.
Oh.
And that's basically like shows and movies set during the time that Halloween, our holiday, tries to evoke.
The Skeleton War.
Skeleton Wars, sure. But before, it predates our modern holiday. And great examples of this would be like Sleepy Hollow.
Sure.
And Over the Garden Wall is 90% that. Yeah. The other bucket of what makes something Halloweeny is modern day horror. And that's movies and TV things set on our actual modern day Halloween, trick-or-treaters, Halloween decorations. And this episode's that. So I was kind of watching it and I'm like, maybe one of the reasons I consider this to be the ultimate Halloween show is it does both.
Okay.
Like just when I think it's only going to give us that vintage, that old school fall autumn feel, and it's not going to have any of the Halloweeny stuff, they threw in an episode that gives you full trick-or-treaters, Halloween lights, suburbia
High school
during
Halloween party.
Yeah, and you get it all. And it's like, I think on a rewatch, I realized that, and it boosted it up more for me as well, is that it kind of executes on both of those halves of Halloween.
Yes.
One more thing is that we haven't really talked too much about it yet. This is maybe the best soundtrack ever for Over the Garden Wall. This episode has maybe my favorite song for about 1 second.
There's an old black train coming, scraping along the island.
Yeah, the whole soundtrack's done by the Blasting Company.
Petrovich Blasting Company.
Yeah, they're awesome. And for this episode, they actually did modern sounding music, whereas most of the soundtrack is, you know, jug band kind of stuff.
Tiny Star is probably the weirdest song on the album. It's like the song playing at the party.
Yeah, it is. It's still a good song. It's just weird that it's on the soundtrack.
This weird like Eurovision EDM song, but...
Why are you talking to them?
When Greg says that he thinks he hears the last frog of the season.
Yeah.
I keep hearing ribbiting around town, and I think it's the last frog of the season.
That is like the perfect childhood idea. That it's not a thing, but you hear it and you're like, oh, and you're like, wait a second.
It's a rock fact.
It's not a thing. Yeah, we get the origins of the rock fact in this episode.
Oh, hey, and look, I also got this rock. Hey, Wart, wanna learn some rock facts?
Also, kind of a fun little trivia factoid when they're in the graveyard. Some of the tombstones are the names of characters from The Unknown.
Oh, okay.
So I think the gravestone they're hiding behind in this episode is Quincy Endicott.
Oh, okay.
So I'll double check. But it kind of gives some credence to the idea that the unknown's not real. It's like an afterlife. Like they slipped into the afterlife momentarily when they were there. So kind of unclear, but it's a cool little thing.
Hey, isn't that Wart's little brother?
No, I'm the headless elephant.
Guess it's time for us to talk about number 8.
Okay.
What do you got for us, Avery?
Number 8 is this is sort of a tier of its own with number 9 of episodes that I think are good and important to the plot, but in and of themselves, just less effective and less of the things I love. And this would be episode 1, The Old Grist Mill.
Bingo.
Does you have number 8?
Number 8's The Old Grist Mill for me as well.
The first 30 seconds of The Old Grist Mill might be my favorite part of the show, just because I associate it with sitting down and watching it at the start of the fall and just the emotions it elicits of the frog playing the piano.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important to note. So The Old Grist Mill, it opens with an intro to the whole show, where it shows vignettes of basically all the characters who we will come to meet later. Then it cuts to Wirt and Greg lost. They realize they're lost in the woods. They're just kind of walking, and Wirt's like, wait, are we lost? Where are we?
Greg?
They hear something out in the woods. Turns out to be the woodsman. Wirt doesn't want to talk to him because he thinks he's a serial killer.
We should ask him for help.
No, we should not ask him for help.
But you shush.
You shush.
So they talk to the woodsman. The woodsman seems to be not trying to kill them, so he offers them to come back to the old grist mill, the titular mill. The woodsman warns them that they shouldn't be wandering the woods at night alone because the beast is afoot. This is our first mention of the beast, that there's a beast out there who's going to gobble you up, basically. And then a giant dog attacks. That's most of the episode. So a giant dog attacks. The
Very
boys,
spooky, evil one.
spooky, evil dog. Some good scares there. The boys fend off the dog, but in the process destroy the mill because the dog destroys most of the mill. So the woodsman comes back and is in disarray because he apparently needs the mill. We don't really find out why until later, but he needs the mill to do his work. It's been destroyed, and he basically tells the boys they need to go off on their own and seek shelter, find a town. That's all he tells them.
Beware the unknown! Fear the beast and leave these woods.
It sets the mood effectively. It brings you into the world. I would say my biggest problem with the episode is that it tries to do a little too much. I don't feel the crunch of 10 episodes very often, but the first time I watched The Old Grist Mill, I was not that excited about the show because I'm already in this unfamiliar world. The characters don't even know why they're there, what's going on, and then it's like, there's a woodsman with a lantern, and there's a beast, and there's a dog with a turtle, and he's evil, and there's oil, and there's wood, and I'm like, ugh. It stopped being plot hooks and started just being people just saying stuff.
Right.
And it's whizzing by me. And that wasn't a problem on rewatch, but I think that it stumbles a little bit there for me, where it's just, I'm not saying they should have gone to 11 episodes, but I think this episode is a little bit crunched in terms of all the things it tries to introduce.
I grind the horrid hazelwood trees into oil to keep this lantern lit.
I think that's fair. I didn't find that like being too many hooks, because I found they left them kind of intentionally vague, but there is a lot of them introduced.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with the first episode is that it's set at night, which seems kind of silly. But even Pat McHale, the creator, has acknowledged this. He didn't want the first episode to be set at night because it doesn't really introduce you to the main vibe of the show, which is the warm fall colors. Yeah. It's purely night, spooky Black Forest. And it's not until the second episode you really start to see those fall colors come out. But they needed the first episode to be set at night for it to make sense that these boys are lost and in danger.
Right.
So it was a compromise they needed to make. And I think that's the biggest weakness, is that if you're watching this and you see that cover and you think you're gonna get this cozy fall show, it's a very dark episode. A lot of it's very dimly lit intentionally. Takes away from it a bit, and
literally dark too. I mean, it's probably not the darkest episode thematically, but it's up there.
Yeah.
You have beautiful eyes.
I will say Christopher Lloyd as the woodsman is fantastic. He's so good. He's in a lot of episodes, but this is his biggest showing.
I don't know what Christopher Lloyd is like in real life, but when he talks, it's so like wet. And I'm like, is that what he sounds like?
What are you doing here? Explain yourselves.
Maybe it is, I don't know, but it's crazy. He's like,
It is your burden to bear.
Right, yeah, got it.
And it's so perfect for this character.
Perfect, because the woodsman needs to be believably like a grandfather trying to save you vibe, while also seeming dangerous and like, this guy might be crazy and trying to kill me, and he needs to be both. And Christopher Lloyd is the perfect casting for that.
What are you boys whispering about?
We're talking about running way out of here.
I mean, it's a good episode, it's just not...
Yeah.
It's hard for the first episode of anything to be the best.
Yeah.
There's
probably some examples.
There's probably some good examples, but this one, I knew it would be at the bottom of... This is one of the ones I was most sure about being at the bottom of my list.
I think it gets the edge over Into the Unknown just because it's set in the woods for me, and I like that more.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did you know that if you soak a raisin in grape juice, it turns into a grape? It's a rock fact.
At the end, the woodsman, he tells Greg that he needs to give his frog a proper name.
And little one, you look after that frog. Give him a proper name.
The whole show, Greg is trying to name his frog, and I'll put in a smash cut of some of the names he comes up with. It is one of the funniest things in the show.
You got your work cut out for you.
Now where did that frog named Kitty go? I'm gonna call him Wirt.
That's gonna be really confusing.
Come on, George. You're a manly frog, and you need some socks. Benjamin Franklin! And you were there too, Jason Funderburker.
But he tells Wirt that, because Wirt tries to blame this whole thing on Greg. He's like, Greg, you let a dog here. And the woodsman tells Wirt, you're the eldest.
Got it all wrong. You have it backwards. You are the elder child. You are responsible.
And I thought that was such an interesting theme for the show to explore, because most times that a show is an old brother and a younger brother, the older brother is like bullying the younger brother, bossing them around, ignoring them.
Yeah.
This show takes a very different approach where Wirt is like kind of just distracted and not present. And that's a very odd thing for the older brother to be. He's constantly like reciting poetry and not really like aware of what's going on. And Greg is the one that kind of actually like gets them in and out of trouble through his like childlike imagination. And that's just a very interesting dynamic I don't see explored a lot.
That rings so true, but that you just haven't seen in anything else.
Yeah.
And I mean, Greg is just a completely goofy character, done so perfectly.
Oh. Hey, where are you going? Ain't that just the way?
We should say Wirt voiced by Elijah Wood.
And Greg voiced by Colin Dean,
Yeah.
who I assume has done a lot of other voice work because dang is he good at it.
They're so good. You couldn't have cast this better.
No.
And it definitely helps that you feel the Lord of the Rings coziness automatically. Like that's just built in. you hear it sounds like Frodo the whole time.
I'm gonna call you Kitty.
What? Maybe I'll start calling you Candy Pants.
Whoa, yeah!
So time for number 7.
Number 7 for me, which is the bottom of this mid-pack.
Yep, bottom of the middle.
Bottom of the mid-pack is number 4, Songs of the Dark Lantern.
Bingo.
Wow.
That's so funny.
Songs of the Dark Lantern is a little dalliance where they show up to this spooky old tavern. It's very Dungeons and Dragons, which I love, which I do love. They show up to this spooky old tavern, and basically the residents of this town sing at them for 20 straight minutes. Is more or less it, right? I don't know. What?
Yeah, I mean, it's more or less a character study episode where the whole thing is that Wirt's just trying to get directions.
Wow, finally some good luck. Let's go to this creepy tavern and ask for some directions.
But he gets caught up singing songs trying to discover himself and what his identity is. And the villagers are very obsessed with him picking a specific identity. And he kind of gets sidetracked by that.
Yeah, lover, sing us your love song.
Love song.
Yeah, lover. Sing us your love song.
In the end, they don't even get directions, and they end up having to leave the tavern because they hear Beatrice is in danger. They go off and save Beatrice. They think she's been attacked by the woodsman, but that's all a misunderstanding. She actually bonked her head on a tree. The woodsman was just chopping a tree. But they rescue Beatrice from the woodsman. This is one of the points where I was watching the show, I'm like, the poor woodsman. He's just he's just trying to help them, and every time the boys show up, they knock him over and take his stuff and run away.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the end of the episode, they escape on the back of Fred the horse. This is our intro to Fred the horse. So the boys, Fred the horse, and Beatrice escape on horseback, and it is the first episode where we see the beast.
What direction did those children go? You leave those children be! Beast! Beast!
And it's great. Like that, the introduction of the beast is excellent, but for me, this episode is it's almost like an intermission in a weird way. Where
It's a rest for the characters, and it's a rest for us.
Yeah, it's a rest, and it's a concert. They just do 5 songs in here, not of all the different townsfolk.
Yep.
They're all very good. They're great. They're these kind of Broadway songs of someone where it's dialogue delivered in song. They're really fun. There's lots of good voice acting. It has another kind of top 3 line for me, which is the master.
I don't know. I don't really like labels. I'm just sort of like myself, you know?
Maybe he's simple.
I wrote down, maybe he's simple, because it is one of the lines that I will never not laugh at when I hear it.
I quote that one so much. It's amazing.
Maybe he's simple and the Highwayman are 2 of the best jokes in the whole show.
Yeah.
The Highwayman's initial, I'm the Highwayman.
I'm the highwayman.
Okay, good to know.
And then his whole song, that is so well done.
I'm the highwayman. I make ends meet, just like any man.
So yeah, I'd say that it's lower on my list because it's just a lot of songs. And while the songs are good, I prefer the episodes where they are exploring or solving a mystery or there's horror. And this episode intentionally doesn't do any of that. It's a musical intermission. And it's well executed. It's just not my top pick, and that's why it's kind of the bottom of the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I think that my favorite episodes, kind of the big boys that are coming, balance a lot of things just perfectly, where it is spooky and funny and fun and engaging, and this is not really many of those things. That's really what there is to it.
Ooh, better beware. Ooh, the beast is out there.
And the beast looks so good. The creature design of the beast is pretty much damn near perfect. Silhouette almost the entire show. And that, if you're a little kid, it's the perfect blend of feeling like a fairy tale, but being genuinely scary.
Oh, I mean, it's so much scarier than the monster in 99% of things.
Yeah. And do you remember the name of the voice actor for him?
For the Beast?
Yeah.
No.
We'll put his name here. He's an opera singer.
Okay.
Like a quite famous opera singer. And he does have a song in the show that shows why they hired an opera singer. But it's this very operatic, Baroque kind of classical sounding voice that it makes a lot of sense to me why they did that choice, but it's not something I would have thought of.
Good job, Samuel Raimi.
Really? Yeah. I'm assuming no connection to Sam Raimi.
Oh, yeah, spelled entirely differently. R-A-I-M-E-Y. No, fair enough. Yeah.
It's not Sam Raimi.
It's not Sam Raimi. It's not John Hughes or Sam Raimi. It's no 90s directors. It's none of them.
This is the first episode that tells us that Wirt and Greg are stepbrothers.
Right.
Because Wirt's singing a song, and it's a great song. It's very funny. It's a terrible song.
My name is Wirt, and his name is Greg. We're related because my mom remarried him and gave birth to him with my stepdad.
And that was kind of the first tease in the show that there would be a real-world twist. Because in my mind, I can't think of anything set in like 1800s Americana folklore where you'd call someone a stepbrother.
Yeah.
Like that concept, even if that happened, you wouldn't call it that. That's a very like modern colloquialism.
It felt like the scene in like a dream sequence where they hear something that pulls them out of it for a second.
Yeah.
And then come back in. You're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're moving along.
We're not from around here. Can you all give me some directions today?
But I think that adds a lot of credence to the conflict between the two brothers over the whole show, is that when two brothers are arguing in a show, you're never like, oh, are they actually going to hate each other and leave each other for dead? It's like, no, they're brothers.
Right.
I think when adding the stepbrother thing, it adds
half-brother, but yeah.
Yeah, half-brother, sorry. It adds this little bit of like tension that he's not just frustrated at Greg, he's frustrated at Greg and having a stepdad.
Once again, you ruined my life.
Who, me?
Oh, you and your stupid dad.
And the emotions of that is all boiled up in his relationship with Greg, which creates like a much more nuanced and complicated brother relationship than just your standard like two brothers picking on each other. Yeah. And I really like that.
No, that's a good call.
I found a duck. Do you know how to make eggs from a duck? I'm hungry.
What about the Beast? The Beast is upon me.
All right, so we're on a streak of 2 in a row. Let's see if we can get another one.
Well, we're not going to, because you've already said mine. But what's your number 6?
Okay, my number 7. Nope, 6. My number 6.
Your number 6.
My number 6 is another solid, compelling one, but that just doesn't do enough. It doesn't balance all of the things I like. It does some things very well, but doesn't balance all the things I like about the show, is The Ringing of the Bell.
Wow, okay. I have that a lot higher.
I suspected you would.
I have that a lot higher. My number 6 is Into the Unknown.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So I originally thought it would be more in the 8 or 9 realm.
Yeah.
But it kind of moved up to 6 on I said I liked it more on the rewatch. It moved up to 6. So that's the real world twist episode. So we've already talked about Into the Unknown. So Ringing of the Bell. This is much higher for me. So I'm definitely curious.
I suspected you would. The Ringing of the Bell is probably the most pure horror of any of them. There is a actually fairly compelling mystery to it. It is probably the darkest episode, maybe
the last one,
maybe the finale, but it's up there.
They're wandering around. The woodsman gives them another warning about the beast, and they blow him off again. Again, poor woodsman. They seek shelter from the rain in a creepy old cabin where they meet a girl named Lorna.
Who are you?
We're burglars!
No, we're not.
And it seems like Lorna is being kind of abused by her evil aunt. It's very Cinderella story kind of thing, where like she's forced to do chores.
Auntie whispers.
Yes, so Auntie whispers, Lorna says, my auntie's gonna be home soon and she's evil, you can't be here. But she shows up, so the boys hide, Auntie whispers comes home.
I can smell the children in this house.
What, children? I'm like in high school.
Yeah, well, you still stink. Shh, you
Doesn't find the boys, goes to bed. So then Wirt and Lorna kind of have a budding romance, but because of Greg's antics.
Paging Dr. Cucumber! You're needed in the operating room!
And accidentally wakes up Auntie Whispers.
Right.
So they have an altercation with her. They run away from her because you think Auntie Whispers is evil, and they end up locking themselves in a dark closet with Lorna. We then revealed the twist that Auntie Whispers is actually the caretaker for Lorna, who is evil, and turns into a ghost. So Lorna sneaks up on them as an evil ghost, which is horrifying. They escape the cabin and run away. And Greg uses the bell that Auntie Whispers uses to control Lorna. He uses it to exorcise the ghost from her.
What the?
Oh, he ate the witch's magic bell when...
Fine, do something.
Which never occurred to Auntie Whispers, or she chose not to. But they basically save Lorna. Auntie Whispers is sad because she thinks this now means Lorna will leave her because she doesn't need her anymore. But Lorna decides to stay with Auntie Whispers, and all the characters go off on their own.
So I understand why you'd have this ranked highly. I do think it's very effective. It would be the best episode of Scooby-Doo probably ever filmed.
Oh yeah.
And there's an actual compelling twist within the episode rather than as part of the overarching story, which is not something that happens many times in the show.
Right.
Oh, for some reason I thought that old lady was the people eater, but it was Lorna all along.
Auntie Whispers' design, I get liking it. I didn't love Tim Curry's performance as Auntie Whispers. He's too old and can't really talk anymore. And like she gets a little past Uncanny Valley to the point where she's kind of like a hand puppet.
Keep away from my Lorna, or you shall be hastily gobbled up.
I really liked it. I liked that it was this kind of muted, weird, cold performance. It felt like someone who lived their whole life in the unknown might be very removed, but I also understand it was a much more singular performance that I could get not clicking, so I'm not surprised.
Well, now that you're cured, you won't be needing old Auntie Whispers anymore to look after you.
Yeah, and on the short list of kind of guest characters you're comparing to, right? It's good, right? It's not bad. It doesn't take me out of it, but if I compare Auntie Whispers to some of the main guest characters from the higher ups on my list, it doesn't quite get there.
Then no one shall be devoured alive tonight.
So I guess reasons I love this episode, the vibe of the rain pattering on the roof and the sound of the rain hitting the dry leaves, and when they're in the cabin, it's raining outside. That's like peak cozy for me in this show, is them like lighting a fire in what they think is an abandoned cabin in a rainstorm in the middle of the fall. That just can't be beat for me. I really liked Auntie Whispers. Some specific, I think her creature design, creature, she's a creature. Her creature design's awesome, and what they do with her pupils is really interesting. They distort her pupils into non-human shapes, which gives her this very like almost cat eye effect. I really thought it was effective. I truly believed she was evil until the end. And her like black teeth, I really liked it.
And arguably she still kind of was. She was letting this ghost possess her niece.
Well, I feel like it didn't occur to her to do that, but you could definitely make the argument that she intentionally didn't cure her niece.
Yeah, and the fact that they get kind of a happy resolution was weird.
There's a theme in this episode that's beautifully done to me, and this is an overarching theme, and that's chosen family.
Yeah, okay.
Wirt and Greg are the main example. Obviously, two brothers, friction because their parents are remarried to each other, but they choose to love each other and support each other. And to me, that earns it more than if they were just brothers. I kind of already talked about that. Yeah. But the fact that they choose to really love each other and support each other when they're only half brothers makes it more earned and less like obvious that it would clearly seek that resolution. The end with Auntie Whispers in this reconfirms that theme for me. Okay. Like to me, the fact that Lorna chooses to stay and love her despite her flaws and choose to kind of see good in Auntie Whispers, I find that heartwarming. And it's actually like, I get that it didn't work for you, but the ending of this episode is one of the better emotional endings to an episode in the series for me.
Okay.
Maybe because I'm looking for that theme, but it really brought that home. And it's like, even in this darkest place of the unknown, there are these moments of real love and family. And that really got to me.
They banished the evil spirit with the power of the bell.
You can have it back after Greg Jr. goes to the bathroom.
Time for...
Number 5?
Number 5.
My number 5 is Lullaby in Frogland.
Ooh! Yeah. Mine's a lot higher. Okay. Lullaby in Frogland.
I'll bet I'm wrong about what we have at 1 and 2 then. I thought we were going to mash.
Lullaby in Frogland was a contender for my number 1. Okay. So it's not, but it was one I was playing with for number 1.
We're at the realm where I really have nothing bad to say about the episode.
Yeah, it's true. We're now in the top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5 over the Garden Wall episodes.
And we're including the finale, and we're including
Everything's good from here on out.
everything's amazing. Lullaby in Frogland is a wonderful episode. So they are on the ferry that they had to get the money from Endicott for, and it is entirely crewed, and passengers are all frogs.
Yeah. Whole boat of frogs.
Whole boat full of frogs, getting up to all kinds of froggy, wacky adventures. It's hilarious. The bits are great. They land the boat, and then that's sort of the first 2/3 of the episode is them on the ferry, getting up to hijinks. It's weirdly a character piece for Jason Funderburker the Frog.
Yeah, and one of the best songs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The music is
Over
excellent.
the Garden Wall, the song.
Yep.
So yeah, the boat lands. All the frogs go live in the muck, which is a great little visual.
Greg, I call this mud.
I call that mud over there. Yeah.
So they go in the mud, and then we kind of get the second half of the episode.
Which is Adelaide.
Yeah, so they go off. Beatrice, the whole time, has been leading Wirt and Greg to Adelaide. Mm-hmm. She's told them that Adelaide can help them escape the unknown, and they trust her, and they're going with her. Turns out it was a trap. Beatrice actually was luring them to Adelaide. Adelaide was going to do horrible, unsavory things to them, which Beatrice didn't know the extent of it, but she knew it wasn't good. Mm-hmm. Turns out Adelaide wanted to put cotton in their heads and turn them into child slaves.
Right.
Which is really dark.
And once I fill their heads with wool, they'll become just like little sheep and follow my every command.
In exchange, Beatrice was going to be given golden scissors that can make her no longer a bluebird, and she can cure her whole family of their curse, and they can go from being bluebirds back to being humans again. Mm-hmm. So that's the finale, but Adelaide is thwarted because they open the door and the cold night air melts Adelaide. But it does cause a feud between the boys and Beatrice.
They ditch her.
It wasn't what it looked like. I was just... Please come back.
And Beatrice, now ridden with guilt, is left to... Well, we don't really know at this point, but she's alone in the woods now, feeling guilty.
It should be noted she did have kind of a change of heart right before she took them to Adelaide, where she tried not to.
Great, then it's agreed we're not going to Adelaide's. Good night, Wirt.
Oh, what? Oh, good night, Beatrice.
She even offered to give herself up to Adelaide rather than give up Wirt and Greg.
What if I became your servant?
I need a big, strong child.
Arguably the strongest character episode for Melanie Linsky is Beatrice, who is spectacular.
But she's great as Beatrice.
Yeah.
She's
very talented actress, very talented voice actress, and she does great.
If I was you, I wouldn't even want to go home.
Yeah, but I can't stay here forever.
Why not?
Well, what's interesting is this was originally 2 episodes.
And I think I probably would have liked that better.
I really like that this episode takes you 2 different places. You get the whole frog boat ride, which I love. And then I also really like the Adelaide in the pasture and them camping out the night before. This episode, more than any other one, feels like an actual adventure.
Okay.
Like it covers the most ground. It's got a lot of emotional peaks and valleys. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's very high on my list. Contender for number 1. But yeah, I think that's actually a strong suit for me. But I get that the episode is less focused than other ones for sure.
And it's a 20-minute episode, right? Like, not even. It might be even shorter. And just to have these 2 diametrically opposite things, I'm kind of just like, have 11 episodes and spend more time with Adelaide and more time with the frogs. And I get why they didn't, but just if we're talking differentiation, this fine.
Yeah, should note the boat, the McLaughlin brothers boat. Shout out my last name, printed on that little boat.
And I mean, it's so much fun. Everything I've talked to this point where I'm saying it wasn't as fun or it wasn't the part I enjoy, them on the boat with the frogs, I could just watch on loop.
Oh my God.
We've hit the point where, with the exception of the finale, everything we're going to talk about on the list is just like me sitting here like,
And like the fall time vibes.
Yeah.
When there's so many shots of them just on the boat looking out over like the reeds and the cornfields and the sun is setting. That could just be a wallpaper for me for all time.
I think I don't know that there's many like sunsets in this show. This one has like a great sunset.
So with the frogs looking out over it. One of the best musical numbers where they discover that Jason Funderburker, the frog, can sing.
At night, when the lake is a mirror,
Huh?
Whoa.
and the moon rides the way.
Which is not revisited except when they have him sign the record contract.
Oh my God. When they get off the boat, not only because there's a line earlier in the episode where Greg says that the president's nude. Because at this point we should say he's not called Jason Funderburker, he's calling him George Washington,
right? And
then later Ben Franklin. But he's calling him the president, and he says the president's nude. Look how cold he is. Look at his cold feet.
He's an outcast, and he's cold. Feel these cold feet.
No.
He needs socks. So later in the episode, after Jason Funderburker or George Washington the Frog sings his song, the other frogs give him a record deal and give him socks.
You done good, Mr. President. You done good.
Come on, Greg.
Something that this whole show does, that this episode is a good example of, anytime anyone talks about the Beast, they're shadowed. There's a shadow behind them.
Okay.
And it's something that I think it was in the commentary track, Pat McHale said at first it was accidental, but it just kind of came naturally, and then they solidified it as a rule. So every time in the show when someone talks about the Beast, and they're, saying like the lore of the Beast or whatever it is, without fail, there's a big spooky shadow behind them.
Ever sing his mournful melody.
He lurks out there in the unknown, seeking those who are far from home.
I do as he commands, the voice of the night, the beast of eternal darkness.
Adelaide has this weird line about where she's like a cultist. I do as the Beast commands, or like the Great Lord, the Beast. It's it's interesting.
Insinuating that like the Beast has like rule power over this whole land,
Which was not something I had suspected till that point. I didn't think Adelaide and the Beast, even kind of knowing Adelaide was a bad guy, I didn't think that they were in cahoots necessarily.
It felt very Lord of the Ringsy, where it's like all the evil powers are at least aware of each other. Like Sauron and Shelob, like are not friends, but they kind of have like an agreement. It felt like that. Like that's kind of the vibe I got. Maybe it's just because of Elijah Wood.
No. This is basically Lord of the Rings for kids.
Hurry it up, Greg.
I'm realizing I didn't say my number 5. So my number 5 is Schooltown Follies, which we'll get to.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's crazy.
Which I originally had a little bit higher, but not at the top.
Okay.
But again, it's like we said, everything from here on out is just...
That's fair enough.
It's only bangers now, so...
Okay. Well, I guess we'll talk about Schooltown Follies when we get to it, but it'll be a while.
I'm sure. I assumed it would be one of your... Yeah, I thought it would be higher on mine.
That's...
Big shock to you, I know. But like we said, everything here is bangers. So yours was Lullaby in Frogland. Mine was Schooltown Follies.
Yep.
So we are at number 4.
So number 4 and 3, I was able to kind of divide into chunks of 2 a lot of the time. Number 3 and 4 are very, very close for me. And there's a very specific reason why the finale ended up as number 4 for me.
Me too.
Okay, there we go.
The unknown is number 4.
Episode 10 is our showdown. Most of the episode is spent with kind of the woodsman, Greg, Beast, and Wirt.
Yeah, this is the only episode where I actually had to take plot notes because there's a lot that happens.
There is.
So the episode opens with Greg in the woods with the Beast taking the trials, which is basically the Beast trying to break his spirit.
Such a great little bit.
It's so good. And this is straight out of a fairy tale where, bring me a golden comb, and he brings him honeycomb and these things.
Lower the sun into this cup, and Greg's just still having a blast.
See? That old sun's going right down into this old cup.
It cuts away, and the woodsman seeks out the Beast because he hears his song being sung in the woods. So all the characters show up for this episode. So the woodsman is now seeking out the Beast. At the same time, Wirt and Beatrice are also looking for Greg, who they know have been taken by the Beast. We'll get to why in another episode.
Yeah.
And the Beast is doing his full-on song. Wayward Souls, I think is the name of it. And this is where it really showcases that he's an opera singer.
Samuel Ramey he's got pipes.
Oh my God, he's really good.
When you submit to the soil of the earth.
This is happening in the woods. Beatrice and Wirt find Greg. He's being turned into an edelwood tree.
Right.
He's coughing out leaves, but that's just because he was eating leaves.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, the leaves are even growing inside of him.
No, I was just eating leaves.
And then there's a big showdown with the woodsman and the beast. They do battle with each other, which is kind of how they have a window to get to Greg.
Yeah.
But the beast defeats the woodsman, doesn't kill him, but he's like unconscious.
Yeah.
And basically makes a deal with Wirt. He says like, you can save your brother, Greg, by taking up the lantern, take up the role of woodsman, keep the lantern lit, and your brother's soul will not be extinguished, which is presumably the same deal he made with the woodsman.
Take on the task of lantern bearer, or watch your brother perish.
But Wirt calls him on his bluff.
My favorite non-comedic line of the show is, wait, that's dumb.
Wait, that's dumb. Basically calls him on his bluff. He's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Wait, that's dumb.
What?
It seems like your soul's in the lantern.
Yeah.
And which I think is what is happening. Like they don't confirm it, but that's kind of like what ends up being true.
Yeah.
So Wirt doesn't take up the mantle of the lantern. He just rescues Greg, and they wander off back to the real world. The woodsman has a final confrontation with the beast where he blows out the lantern and presumably kills the beast. So it was all a trap. And it establishes the woodsman was only doing it because he wanted to save his daughter.
Yep.
The beast told him that if the lantern ever went out, his daughter would be killed.
Wasn't that established earlier?
Yeah, it was. But basically, because Wirt calls him on his bluff, the woodsman learns this as well. So Wirt and Greg go back home where they wake up in the hospital, still on Halloween night. The woodsman goes back to his house where his daughter is actually just there waiting for him, which is a really sweet moment where he basically realizes she was never gone and he's reunited with her. Beatrice's family is all turned back to humans because Wirt gives her the scissors from Adelaide's.
Which he had stolen and was withholding because he was mad at her.
Yep. So Beatrice and her whole family are turned from bluebirds back to humans.
And I believe they appear as bluebirds in this episode, right? Because you kind of wake up with Wirt nestled in with the bluebird.
Yeah, eat your dirt.
Yeah.
Eat your dirt. Another hint that they're probably in the afterlife.
Here, eat more dirt. Thanks.
Basically, the whole thing wraps up. The boys are back in the real world. There's a little teaser that the whole thing was not a dream because when they're in the hospital and Greg shakes the frog, which they've now decided the perfect frog name, Jason Funderburker.
Yeah.
And you were there too, Jason Funderburker.
Me?
Not you, Jason Funderburker, my frog.
He shakes the frog, and you can see the ringing of the bell from the Auntie Whispers episode in the frog's belly, telling us maybe it actually all really happened. We'll never know.
And I really don't want to.
And then, I was telling them about the time we almost got...
It's a Wizard of Oz ending, where it's like, was it a dream or was it real? So there's a lot going on in this episode. It's fully loaded.
There's a few things that I want to call out in particular. One is that the start, when Greg has gone off with the beast, and it's now like fully winter, and it's snowy.
Yeah.
And seeing Greg actually in distress for the first time in the whole show is heartbreaking.
It is.
He's still cheerful. He's still happy-go-lucky, but he's like clearly very cold and like running out of energy. And this is panic-inducing.
Did you fetch for me the golden comb?
Will that work?
This is a honeycomb.
Golden comb of honey.
It's like the last character in the world you would ever want any harm to come to is Greg.
Man, it is tough. And like, it's not that bad, and then when he does end up in the Edelwood tree, you want to jump through the screen and chop him loose yourself.
Oh, Greg.
Wirt, I did it. I beat the beast.
This is where I consistently cry in watching. At the very end I cry, when it's the final vignettes, I tear up. But I will reliably cry when they find Greg. It plays one of the best songs in the series, which we haven't gotten to, is Potatoes and Molasses. There's a remix of that song in this episode.
Potatoes et molasses.
Yes, the Latin version of Potatoes and Molasses, which is heartbreaking.
Whoa. What happened here?
Yeah.
And when they find Greg and you actually think he might die, and he's like, Wirt is trying to save him and chopping off the branches, and the music is swelling, I always tear up. I can't, it punches you right in the gut.
Oh, it's...
And this is it's a kid's show, but it's dark. You don't know if they're gonna kill these kids. They very much could.
You could kill Greg for sure, and they...
Jason Funderburker, the perfect frog name.
Greg? Greg?
I loved There's maybe the best visual moment of the entire show for me is when the lantern flashes by the beast and you get like a little glimpse of his design.
This episode has so much to talk about, but I will say probably my favorite thing, it's another kind of lesson for kids. And it's like the power of critical thinking. Because this show is mostly about two young kids being tricked by adults.
Yeah.
The Beast is trying to manipulate them. Beatrice is trying to manipulate them. Even the Woodsman, he's not tricking them, but he's very cryptic.
Yeah.
And it's all about like kids kind of learning how to talk to adults, but actually like look out for themselves. It's almost like Stranger Danger, but done really maturely.
Yeah, it's like what would you do if you were in an actual fairy tale? And how would you actually get out of it and take care of yourself and not get eaten by the witch, right?
Yeah. And Wirt dealing with the Beast at the end
and
great. Saying, that's dumb, I'm getting my brother out of here. And basically saying like, this problem you're trying to put on me is not my problem, and I won't fall for it. I know that all I need to do is save my brother, and anything you're trying to tell me is a trick.
I've got my own problems to take care of. This one's yours. My brother and I are going home.
And it truly is the don't get in the van with a stranger moment, but done on an emotional level I've never seen done. And another thing that like for kids, I think, they hit it out of the park with the messaging for children on this.
And that is a culmination of Wirt's character finding his confidence and like landing on his relationship with Greg and sort of taking away what he's going to take away from the entire story. It's perfect. It's so good.
You're not trying to help me. You just have some weird obsession with keeping this lantern lit. It's almost like your soul is in this lantern.
I think the only reason it's not higher is because the other episodes are so good above it. Like, it doesn't fail as an ending in any way. I actually think it is probably the perfect ending for the show.
Right.
It's just that I prefer to watch the side adventures more if I had my pick.
Yeah, we start to get into rewatchability, and this one is less of a, I wouldn't just go throw this one on.
Unless you want to cry.
Yeah, that's fair.
We both had The Unknown as our number 4s. Time for number 3s. What do you got for us?
Number 3, I sat down before coming here today, and I said to myself, old Avery, what is going to be the biggest difference between these two lists? And I knew 100% it would be Babes in the Woods.
Okay. Which is, just to be clear, is my number 10, my last place.
This is last place, and it is my number 3.
Again, no wrong answers. No judgment.
Nope, absolutely not. I'm amazed we've been as close as we have on a lot of these.
I guess I also want to say my number 3 is Ringing of the Bell.
Okay.
Just I love that one. It's very high up for me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I think those are our two biggest deltas. But Babes in the Woods is a personal one for me. I acknowledge that there are reasons why some other people might not like it as much. But Babes in the Woods is essentially, most of it is a dream sequence where Greg and Wirt are asleep under a tree, and Greg goes to a magical Oz-like cloud fairyland to have his own little adventure.
Cloud City.
Where he meets, he's greeted by several welcoming committees, by enough of them.
Are there more? Well, that's enough.
He fights the old North Wind and is rewarded by the Queen of the Clouds with a wish.
Yeah, I guess what you basically say is that the episode opens with him and Wirt at their lowest point. Winter has started. Wirt has basically given up on life because they've been abandoned by Beatrice. This immediately follows that. And Wirt says, like, Wirt's basically almost borderline, like, as an adult, I think we could say, like, suicidal. Like, he's like, I'm just gonna lie down and die. If you want to get us out of here, Greg, you can figure it out.
It's not my job to get us home, okay? I'm done.
Are you saying I should be the leader?
I don't care what you do.
So Greg's dream is him working through his anxieties about having to be the leader.
Well, I'm supposed to be a leader, but I don't know how.
Why don't you lead our band in a song?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. He's literally defeating the old North Wind, which is currently killing them with hypothermia, essentially. It's a dark interpretation, but and then he's rewarded with a wish by the Queen of the Clouds. He wishes to go home. She tells him that he can, but Wirt can't. He's already too far gone.
Oh, I should have been leading better. I was goofing off again like always, and now you're stuck here.
So then Greg makes some mysterious other wish. He whispers to her, and she kind of does the, "Are you sure?" And then Greg ends the episode by going off with the beast, presumably exchanging his soul for Wirt's in what is a smash cut from the most whimsical episode, arguably, to just maybe one of the darkest, most powerful moments of the series for me.
Yeah.
But in a way that works, that really, really works for me.
Okay, I have to go now. Goodbye, Wirt.
Yes, come, Gregory.
Oh yeah. Anything where the kid from the kid's perspective, they're dealing with something light and cute and fun, but it's to mask a real world trauma. That's always creepy to me in anything. And this episode is like the best version of that.
Wirt's fate lies solely in the beast's hands now.
Then I know what to wish for.
I love so much the way that it shows you inside Greg's head. And you've been doing a lot of this there's been kind of a consistent camera to a lot of the show so far. And now you're seeing the world as Greg sees it, and you're facing conflict as Greg does. And it's just so much fun. And it's just so goofy, and the design is gorgeous. It's the closest thing to an actual episode of Adventure Time, where it's just all the characters are ridiculous fairy people. But it doesn't lose the plot. You get what's going on. Like, if you're paying attention, you understand what Greg is facing. You have enough context to the characters and the setting that seeing Greg fight the Old North Wind and talk to the Cloud Princess, you get it. And this is a device, it would be too complicated to explain the other examples, but I've seen this device a couple of times where they do an episode or a scene or a chapter inside the head of a very weird character.
Yep.
And when done well, it's almost always my favorite thing of the entire series.
Okay.
I love when they do this well. It's just, I love looking at the story from a different angle.
Right.
And just kind of changing the way that you're seeing the same old thing. I love it.
Ha-ha! Hee-hee-hee-hee.
On top of that, has some great music. That Old North Wind.
The Old North Wind. Yes, he is.
The Old North Wind song is good, and the visual of the little cloud bullies coming out and rolling up their sleeves and then wagging their finger lives rent-free in my head. I don't know why, but I find that so funny and charming, those little chubby, sassy guys.
They're like 20s greasers. They're dancing and snapping. And the Old North, that makes me mad.
Hey, North Wind.
I don't like that one, but that makes me mad.
This is a great episode. Obviously, I don't think every episode's great. The reason it's 10 for me is that this episode is their opportunity to try other art styles. It's a dream sequence, so all the creatures of Cloud City are basically hearkening back to other styles of animation from the era. It looks like old school Looney Tunes and a bunch of other artists we probably can't name because it's from the 30s and 40s.
Yep.
And it's all done beautifully. I just don't prefer that. As well done as the experiment is, I prefer just being in the unknown with the art style the rest of the show has. So it's not that it's not well executed, it's just that if I had my druthers, I wouldn't watch this over it, because it's so different. It's not bad, it's just so different than everything else.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I definitely understand that. For me, it only serves to highlight that you're seeing it through Greg's eyes now.
Oh, narratively, it makes sense. It's just
Yeah, and I do think it's fun the way that the characters are so cutesy and fairy-ish that it becomes creepy. It's effective as creepy for me with just how Candyland sugary sweet they are.
Right. I think this episode is really dark at the end, and it's really effective. This is probably, as much as it's whimsical, I think this is the darkest episode, because this is the characters at their absolute lowest.
Yeah.
At the beginning, Wirt is basically ready to die, and at the end of the episode, Greg sacrifices himself to the beast. So even though it's colorful and whimsical in the middle, it is the low point for the characters, and then the next episodes give us the emotional payoff where the characters have their redemption. But I would never watch this on its own, because without the following episodes, it's too dark and sad.
Interesting.
I need the emotional positivity that comes after this for this to work. I can't watch it on its own.
Okay.
It'd be like watching the first 20 minutes of John Wick and then turning it off. It's you can't do that. I need to see it through if I'm gonna watch this. That's how I feel about it.
No, that's fair.
Look, we've reached land. Feel the dirt. Ah, smell that tree.
Well, we're into number 2. I guess I'll just quickly say, because we've already talked about it, my number 2 is Lullaby in Frogland.
Okay.
As I already said, I absolutely love that episode. The emotional peaks and valleys it takes you through, the setting, the Adelaide stuff, it's all good. But what is your number 2?
So I unironically laid awake last night agonizing over 1 versus 2. And I mean, saying 2 gives away 1, right? It's just kind of where we are. We can talk about number 2 first.
We'll just pretend. Don't do deduction. We'll number 1, block it out of your mind. What is number 2?
Number 2 for me is Schoolhouse Follies, which, along with number 1, if I think of what is an episode of Over the Garden Wall, it's just this one. It just has so many of the iconic lines and songs. I mean, it's got Potatoes and Molasses. It's got Two Old Cat. It's got that wild gorilla on the loose.
It does. Yeah, let's do the brief synopsis. Schooltown Follies, they're wandering through the woods. They end up finding a schoolhouse.
School? Psh, not today.
The episode mostly revolves around Beatrice trying to get Wirt to be more of a man.
Go to the dunce box.
Oh, sure. Okay.
No.
Sure.
No.
So Wirt goes to animal school with the cutest little dressed up animals. Greg skips school and has like a little side quest with all the animals who don't go to school.
The possums and
and
you don't know if they understand him.
Yeah, Jeffrey the raccoon and it doesn't seem like the animals actually speak English. They just are in clothes. They're as dumb as normal animals.
Hot dogs are not actually dogs, regardless of what they teach in school.
But then Jeffrey does knock out the gorilla. I don't know. It's so fun.
So the school teacher, Mrs. Langtree, is very distraught that her ex-lover, Jimmy Brown, has gone missing and left her. So she's very upset about that. Read in the trivia, Jimmy Brown's been missing 4 days. Which is hilarious.
Oh, Jimmy Brown, why did you have to leave me so?
The teacher, Mrs. Langtree's dad, who funds the school, comes, takes all the animals' instruments away, which seems like a punishment, but then we learn later he's actually selling the instruments because he's trying to keep the school open and sell instruments because he opened a school to teach animals to count and spell.
My life savings, my home, everything I had went into that dear, dear school.
So Wirt and Greg go and steal all his stuff, which is a hilarious scene at the time.
Let's steal his stuff.
Let's steal his stuff.
Okay, I think he's asleep. Let's go steal his stuff.
What?
But they steal his stuff because they put on a charity concert to raise money for the school. They raise enough money that they can keep the instruments, the school has money, and everyone's happy. The school stays open and the boys save the school.
And then a gorilla attacks.
Oh, yeah. And then the wild gorilla that's on the loose attacks.
4 times through the episode, someone's giving a speech about something else, and they say, not to mention that wild gorilla on the loose.
And now, with my father threatening to close the school, and that wild gorilla on the loose...
That lonesome Jimmy Brown is off gallivanting who knows where. Not to mention that wild gorilla on the loose.
So the wild gorilla on the loose attacks. Turns out it was actually Jimmy Brown.
Played by Tom Lennon.
Yep. Who's been in a million funny things.
Jimmy?
That's right, darling. I was the gorilla.
He went off in the circus to get enough money to afford a ring for Mrs. Langtree, but then got stuck in the gorilla suit. So Mrs. Langtree and Jimmy Brown are reunited, the school gets to stay open, and it just closes with Greg conducting the band. It's like a pure heartfelt. This one was originally, I know you were surprised it was my number 5.
Yeah.
It was originally my 2 or 3, and then from how much I enjoyed the finale this time and Ringing of the Bell, it got shifted down a little bit, but this could easily be number 1 as well.
I feel like you were just in a spookier mood. Because I think it's hard to argue against this being the funniest episode.
I think it's the funniest. I think it's probably the funniest.
It's the most whimsical. It's got the best Greg moments, I think. It's got the best music. I will hear no argument on that. There's like 5 amazing songs in this one.
Yeah.
Oh, potatoes and molasses. If you want some, oh, just ask us.
Two Old Cat is one of the funniest gags I've ever seen.
Here we go. Here's one old cat. You found another one.
This is just straight up, someone had a dream and was like, this is gonna be funny, let me put this in the show.
Wait, no. I think that cat is too old.
And I was watching it this time with a keen eye. I'm like, are the animals smart? Like, is it like anthropomorphic intelligent animals? They're not. They're just animals that they've dressed up in clothes, and like the pig's pants are falling down, and like they can't play instruments because they're animals. It's just like, it's amazing.
This episode, if you're talking about a rewatch, like this just has everything. I mean, it has the fall aesthetic. It's just so cute and wholesome and funny.
Yeah.
And it just feels like a big warm hug. And it just hits you, like, you can just see how much I've been laughing recounting this compared to, it's amazing.
Sorry, Kitty. We'll have to find another old cat.
The only thing this episode is missing, the only reason it's not higher or even potentially number 1 on my list is that it's not spooky.
Not spooky.
There's no horror, there's no Halloween element to this at all. It's just fall time comedy. And that's fine, but that's the only reason it's not higher for me. If I have to give a critical note and justify why it's not, higher up on the list.
I guess the world really is as sweet as potatoes and molasses.
I guess we're kind of on to number 1, and it's the only one neither of us have talked about. Number 1 is going to be...
Spoiled by both of our sweaters this entire time.
Hard Times at the Huskin Bee.
And I really think there isn't another choice. As much as I agonize between this and Schoolhouse Follies, that was on a personal note. I think I might like Schoolhouse Follies more, and I might want to rewatch it more. But if you're just talking about what is an episode of Over the Garden Wall...
That's what I came down to as well. I was like, I don't know that this is my favorite episode, which is silly because we're doing a ranking. I guess I'll say this. It's my favorite episode, but it doesn't have the highest highs.
No.
Other episodes are scarier. Other episodes are funnier or have better music. But this episode has it all.
It is scary, it is funny, it has great music, it has good plot, it has good characters, it has good Greg lines, it is everything.
And it is the quintessential episode.
It is.
If you look at that cover, this episode delivers on what this show says it's going to be. A fall-time, Halloween-y comedy cartoon show. This is it. This is the quintessential episode. If we were going to do a desert island, if we were going to send a rocket into space with one episode to show aliens, this is the episode.
Call the president.
Call the president. I guess we should quickly summarize it.
So episode 2, Hard Times of the Huskin Bee, they have left the old mill. And they are now into this fairyland, and this is their first encounter with someone besides the woodsman. They've been set on their quest, and the first thing they find is a town. Beatrice is trying to get them to go somewhere else. Did they meet Beatrice in this episode, or did they do it at the end of the first one? They meet Beatrice in this episode.
They meet her in the first episode, but she flies away, and then Greg rescues her from the bush at the beginning of this episode.
Okay, right, so they meet Beatrice.
Can you turn me into a tiger?
No. I just said I'm not magical.
It doesn't have to be a magical tiger.
She tells them about Adelaide and sets them kind of on their loose, this is where they're going. And then they spot signs for a town. Wirt wants them to go to town to find help.
What? Pottsfield. That's the town.
Pottsfield, it's the town. And Beatrice doesn't want them to go there.
Aha! Civilization. See? Now, What the?
They run into, it's just so many good moments, but...
It's pumpkin people.
It's pumpkin people.
There's a weird festival going on where there's all these people who are pumpkins.
Well, first they meet a turkey.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking for a phone.
So yeah, there's all these pumpkin people having a festival. Yeah. It's very creepy. And then you find out these pumpkin people are ruled by Enoch, who's like a giant pumpkin. If anyone's ever seen The Wicker Man, very much inspired by that. It's this giant thing that you think is just an ornament at the festival, but it's actually a giant guy, later revealed to be a cat inside. But basically, they are put to trial by the local people for trespassing and destruction of property since they stepped on pumpkins.
You come to our town, you trample our crops, you interrupt our private engagement. Now you want to leave.
Right.
So their punishment is a few hours of manual labor in the fields.
Right.
So they have to go out and dig holes in the fields. They think they're digging their own graves, but it turns out they're actually digging up skeletons.
Digging up someone else's grave.
Yeah, these people are not pumpkins, they are skeletons living inside pumpkins. So they dig up people's bodies, the skeletons come to life, all the other villagers give them pumpkins to wear, and then they continue on with their festival, and it's like...
Just having a party.
What a wonderful harvest. And what about you? You sure you want to leave?
Me? Yes.
It's a happy ending, and they're like, oh, your debt is repaid, Greg and Wirt. You're welcome to stay if you want. Otherwise, you can go on your way. And they do. They continue off to find Adelaide. So it's just a little side quest where they get tangled up with these locals, briefly imprisoned, and then set loose. That's the plot.
So it's some kind of weird cult where they wear vegetable costumes and dance around a big thing. They seem nice enough.
And God, there's just so many good things to say about this episode. I mean, I'll say Enoch, voiced by Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac.
Wicked Game himself.
Chris Isaac's Wicked Game, which is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Also Chris Isaac, of course, from You Know. I'll just play it. Chris Isaac of Twin Peaks fame, of course. Have to always call it out. This is probably my favorite guest voice acting.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
Enoch is just such a good villain, but not quite a villain.
It saddens me that you don't wish to stay here with us, particularly because I simply have to punish you for your transgressions.
Like the sing-songy way he says, few hours of manual labor. Like you just can't, how did you come up with that? It's so creative.
For those other crimes, I sentence you to a few hours of manual labor.
Wait, what?
It's perfect, and throughout this episode, literally second to second, you're going between this is adorable Pumpkin Town and they're about to get eaten.
Yeah, it's genuinely scary. When they first go in the barn, when they talk to one of the locals, and he has a little line, and as he turns away, there's this breathy exhale that echoes in the pumpkin, and it's so creepy.
Oh, you're wearing costumes.
Well, sure. Pumpkins can't move on their own, can they?
It's a compelling mystery, even more so than Ringing the Bell, I'd say, but it's also just, you really can just sit back and enjoy it as pumpkins and skeletons dancing around this fall village where it's this feeling.
You like this? It's this. It's the most fall vibes of the whole show. It is the fall vibes are distilled into this episode in the purest form.
A harvest festival by skeletons wearing pumpkins.
Literally, what else could you want? The final shots of a lot of the episodes are beautiful. It's the boys walking away into darkness and it'll pan to the woods or the moon or whatever it is. This episode has the best one, which is that the boys walk away into the woods and it's beautiful. It's like a wallpaper I've had on my computer for a long time. And then a little leaf blows along, it gets stuck in a fence. And it's so subtle. And I still don't really know what it's trying to symbolize, but it's very intentional. This leaf is stuck in a fence and the music goes to this creepy droning tone. Mm-hmm. And it very much sets up the mood of the rest of the show of like, something's a little bit off, something's stuck, something's not quite right here. And it's perfect. It's the perfect episode.
I don't know. I can't say any more good things about it. I love the episode. I would rewatch it anytime. It is the absolute epitome of the show.
I also think this episode taps into something like, I want to make another comparison to Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. My favorite Lord of the Rings movie is Fellowship of the Ring. And my favorite part of Fellowship is basically like from the time they leave the Shire up until basically Galadriel is my favorite bit. Because it feels like just pure journey.
Right.
It's not the beginning, but you know there's so much more to come. And it's our characters on this kind of cozy part of the quest where like the stakes are high, but we're not preoccupied with wrapping anything up. It's pure exploration. It's pure...
Or kicking it off. It's also not the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we've done all the bookkeeping to kick it off. We have so much more ahead of us. And this episode is that version for this. Yeah. Where it's like if you just watch this episode, you feel like you're living in the infinite sea of this show.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Like this is, if I was gonna live in one episode, I'd want it to be this one. Well, I guess we've ranked them all. We did it.
At the same number one. So our biggest differences, I had Babes in the Woods at 3, you had it at 10. I had The Ringing the Bell at 7, you had it at 3.
And otherwise, Schooltown Follies was a bit off, like 2 and 5.
I'm gonna come back to this in a year, and I'll bet you'll have that back in the top 2 where it deserves.
But the only ones, I wouldn't put it above Lullaby and Frogland.
Okay.
Personally, like Lullaby and Frogland was almost number 1 for me.
Yeah.
The highest it would go is 3. And so you would have to knock out Ringing of the Bell or The Unknown for me.
Okay.
And I feel like Schooltown Follies and Hard Times at the Huskin Bee kind of do the same thing for me, but Huskin Bee did it a bit better. And I don't need both. Like in my top 3, it's kind of like I have all my bases covered. I've got the perfect plot episode, the perfect scary episode, the perfect fall episode.
Any ranking is valid. It's a spectacular achievement.
No wrong answers.
No.
It'd be like weird if your favorite episode was maybe like the first one.
Yeah.
Just because it's like there's so much more to come. But outside of that, like I can't, even if you did that and you had reasons for it, I'd be like, there's really not a wrong answer. This show is like...
If you're just like a big old John Cleese fan and you go with Mad Love.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it wouldn't be crazy.
No ghost, then I am mad.
Is there anything about the whole series? We got through almost all my stuff I wanted to talk about kind of throughout the episodes.
Me as well. I mean, I don't think we gave the soundtrack enough attention, despite the fact that we gave it a lot of attention. Yeah. Just go throw the soundtrack on. It's so good.
Get your hands on this beautiful vinyl. It's pretty tough to find, but it is like a true treasure because it's not only the songs, it's all the interlude instrumental stuff, which for me is just as good as the actual songs.
Listening to this album is like rewatching the show once you've seen it once or twice. Yeah. It really feels that way. It spans genres. It's just a beautiful arrangement of music. And you are reminded of every episode in listening to it. Like there's just enough of the plot that you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to Adelaide's house today.
Wirt and Greg are such good characters. They're such good characters. And in a lot of stories like this, the main character, in a lot of kids' stories especially, the main character, by design, ends up being a little bit bland. The main character will end up being... They'll have some character traits, but generally they're just the nice, heroic person. Maybe they have a flaw. They probably have some kind of backstory.
And they're like an everyman, so kids, any kid can see themselves in them.
That's the idea. The idea is that you make them somewhat blank so that the kid can project themselves onto them, and I don't think that's the right approach, or even the most effective approach. Wirt especially is such a specific character. He's such a developed character where you kind of see all the edges. You get a complete picture of him in this 90 minutes, more so than like any Disney protagonist or Pixar protagonist or even Miyazaki protagonist. But because it's so specific, I think it makes it more relatable.
Yeah.
Because they define these feelings so well, and they make him feel like such a real person that I think I almost don't want to meet the person who can't watch this and feel some element of Wirt, who was so confident and popular in high school that they can't identify with Wirt at all. There's no way that person's real.
And you're gonna relate between Greg and Wirt. Everyone falls on that spectrum.
Yeah.
Because that covers humanity.
Yeah.
Right? That's a great point, and it ties in. Pat McHale has said that Greg is based on his ideologies as kid, and Wirt is his feelings as an adult and his pessimism.
Yeah.
And it's basically two characters that are two sides of his brain. The pure creative optimist and the pessimist realist, and those two sides of his brain trying to coalesce. And he worked through that with these characters. And I think nothing exemplifies why it works better than that explanation. Like, Greg is all of us as a kid, or even some of us as an adult on our silly days. Like when you just aren't taking things seriously, or when you let things roll off. And Wirt is all of us on our days where we let things get to us, when we second guess ourselves, when we have anxiety and doubts about our lives. And having both of those characters on screen at the same time, working through real horror and comedy, it's just like the most human thing.
It really is.
It just echoes. I think it would echo with anyone.
And there's so little conflict between them too, right? Like there's a little bit, but they don't argue with each other. They don't actively dislike each other very often.
Well, Wirt gets mad at Greg a lot, but it's kind of like I was saying, it feels like it's a manifestation of his own insecurities.
Yeah.
It's not, Greg is always just trying to do what's best for Wirt, and Wirt knows that.
It's not like the conflict is entirely within Wirt.
Yeah.
There's so little conflict that's actually like outward between the two of them that's reciprocated in any way, which I think again makes it feel so real, where you're not like taking sides and there's not like a right and wrong. It is about the kind of the spectrum and the balance and the contrast.
And everyone needs a Greg sometimes and needs to be Greg. It's not better exemplified by the opening of Babes in the Woods. Wirt is beyond repair. He's basically given up.
Yeah.
And Greg is still optimistic. And the little scene of them landing on land and him playing the trumpet and announcing land ho, you can't beat Greg down. No. It's like it's starting to snow, they might die, and he's still just like so happy to be on an adventure with his brother. I don't know. If we could all learn anything, it's to be a little bit more like Greg, but that it's okay to be like Wirt.
Yeah, you do need both, and that the Wirt part of you is important too.
Yeah.
And give him some lovin'. Give him or her some lovin'.
Don't be embarrassed of your poetry and clarinet playing. Embrace it.
Go play it for your sweetie on a cassette tape.
Yeah, you'll find the right people, and hopefully you have a Greg there to support you and force you to go into the party, or to give your tape to Sarah the Bee, or whatever you need in life to kind of get you just over the hump and just give you that little beam of sunshine.